Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast where we take you through the ups and the downs of the world of video games. We are here on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free. However, if you want to support our grassroots independent endeavour, head over to patreon.com/dimpdigital or twitch.tv/dimpdigital and join the community. Hashtag hand in pocket. This week, I'm joined once again by the Nearly Man, the resident Ref Logan. I'm toning down the Nearly Man voice scrape because Nearly Man might not be the tag that you'll be getting in a few weeks' time.
Well, I don't really want to talk about it because I feel like anything I say, I'll put the mockers on it. Like,
you don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, well, it's perilously close. Like, it's almost, you know, when you see these sort of things and you think they've fixed that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they could have been, like, I always liken it to the Top Gear challenges they used to do, where they're always like these, like, head-to-head, like, so close things.
Yeah.
But this genuinely has worked out. I mean, last year it was close.
At one point I think there were 3 points separating three people. And again, you'd have laughed at that. If you put odds on that, the bookies, you'd have been absolutely laughing. But at the moment, it's very close. And let's just transition straight into it, not hang around. We're talking about the Fantasy Gaming League. Now, you had suggested you needed a minor miracle to be in contention, with everything basically hinging on Pentiment. After the likes of Scorn and Gotham Knights didn't really deliver anything compelling score-wise. And I'd signpost this saying, look, art house shit, sometimes these critics lap it up. I was looking forward to it, but we had no real evidence to suggest that the media and the gaming gods would produce this. And at the moment, because these scores, I don't know if I remember them being this fluid last year, changing up and down every couple of days. But at the moment, it's on an 86 Pentiment, which is a great score for that game. Coming out of Obsidian, it's like a little side team led by Josh Sawyer. And it's on the 86. And what that basically means for the Grand Prix is that gives you a clubhouse score currently of 808. Adkins now languishing on 806. Now, the important detail there is that the way that the tie breaks are worked out is on highest game scored. So if you were level, Adkins at the moment would win that because he's 95 for Elden Ring would take that. 94 God of War is what you have. If for whatever reason, in the unlikely circumstances, God of War went up by 1 grade or Elden Ring came down and they were both even and you both had the same score still, which I don't think would necessarily pan out. But if it did, it would go to amount of transfers made. The least is the best, and you both made 3. And then it would finally go down to grid spot, and you were unfortunately handed a grid penalty for missing the deadline, ending up in 5th, I believe, whilst little Adkins is sitting there on 3. So, I mean, if it does come down to that, again, we've talked about the blanks and the deadlines being missed before. There is really only one person to blame. And really, the fact that you're only 2 points ahead, there's 10 points that have potentially been flushed unnecessarily. So this could have been done and dusted already.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too fussed about the transfers. I know what you're saying. But the chances of me picking the games that I picked anyway is probably slim to none. So...
Yeah.
You know, I'm not too fussed about that necessarily. I think it's more that grid penalty that could bite me in the arse. I think that's the one. But
Well, the grid penalty may well be the reason you end up with 2 blanks as well, because you were bumped from, I think you were 1 down to 5. So you may have got all your first choice games and then
very true.
The list wouldn't have been short. See, look, people don't take these deadlines seriously. They're very blasé about it, going, that won't matter.
What happened? I don't know why. I think you even sent out a reminder and I just went, yep, and then just put my phone down and it just evaporated from my brain. But it's super close. I mean, going back to what you said, everything needs to kind of swing. I mean, I think Sonic's landed up pretty much kind of where we expected it, sort of low 70s to high 60s, I think.
Yeah.
Things, Pentiment's probably done better, or best case scenario, and I think that's why I alluded to the other week, because that's kind of what needs to happen, and it has. So yeah, it's just about whether. I mean, I think even since the last time we've looked at it, Football Manager's crept down one from 84 to 83. So there is some fluidity there. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the worry for me, if I was you, would be God of War, because holding a high score of 94 is difficult, because it only takes a few nines, and it will start to chip away at that average, won't it? You want and getting a 9 is hard enough these days, let alone a 9.5 or a 10. So that's the one where it won't go down any further than a 1, because there's like 100 odd reviews in there, but that could be chipped away at. And then Pentiment has been as high as 87, so I would doubt that would go down to an 85. Footy Manager, we said, is an 83 and an 84. So from that perspective, I think you're covered. It could be something silly like Scorn, that goes down to a 67 or something, just gets crapped on in a couple of weeks.
I would have thought they'd have loved that Scorn. Like, it looks like one of them, these like horror games that come out of nowhere and go well. But I think it was
and performance.
Well, they had a load of problems, but that's the
puzzles.
One that surprised me. I thought out of my subs that one was going to do the best, and it's done the worst. So that's how this game can go.
Exactly. So speaking of Pentiment, it's reviewed very well. And you were looking at trailers the other week, probably just to try and push some good energy in. In terms of it being played, it's a Game Pass jobby. It'll be sitting there. Is this ever going to get downloaded and played, or is it just thank you very much, thanks for the score, and then I'll clap you in maybe when I get into the hot seat?
Yeah, I had it pre-downloaded, ready to go, and I booted it up for an hour the other day to sort of do the first sort of hour of it.
This is not a Logan game, surely. I can't. In my head, this doesn't seem like something you would play.
It's typically not, but this is what I mean. This is a great thing about Game Pass, right? Is that you can just give something a go and bin it or not, halfway
can't
through
do
or
that,
whatever.
But I understand that Steve.
Yeah, I mean, Steve allows it. He doesn't. He doesn't like to spend time on things he's not enjoying. But anyway, so I must admit, my initial thoughts are, I don't quite know how this has got an 87 or an 86. That's my initial kind of like. Because
it's weird, because some outlets gave it a 10 out of 10, like IGN, and then GameSpot gave it a 6 out of 10. Not that they are the two oracles, but usually they are aligned within a point or two. Like a 6 out of 10 in the 7 to 10 scoring that typically a game gets means it's below par, whereas obviously a 10 out of 10 is a big statement to put for an outlet to give. So some people clearly it hasn't resonated with at all, but others have absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what it's all about. Like it's not. It is and it isn't what I expected. I think it's felt a little bit slow to get off the ground.
I've heard that. I've heard it's a bit of a slug to get going.
But I want to kind of see. I do want to kind of persevere with it. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say there's 10 things that annoyed me with it, but it's just it's not very fluid in terms of how you move between like rooms, levels, and it's just. And the narrative is
very wordy.
It's very, very wordy. And the text is all in. You can change the text. I will say I've kind of put myself into this, but the text is all in like a very gothic style. And
what, you mean the font?
So sometimes I would recommend to people when they play this, it gives you an option to basically say don't use stylized fonts.
Put it on Times New Roman and be done with it.
Because it just there's a lot of text, and you find yourself basically trying to then actually not just understand and read what they've said, but actually even just like make it legible sometimes. But yeah, I'll probably persist for a bit longer. If it doesn't pull me in a little bit more, I might end up binning it. But it's just it's been very slow. That first sort of hour or so is a bit like, what are we doing here then?
Yeah, I'm 100% going to play this once I've finished up God of War and The Devil in Me, depending on when those both are concluded. Callisto Protocol might be lurking by then, but I'm going to get to it in the foreseeable future. I had this earmarked. The fact that it's reviewed so highly is encouraging. I thought even if it gets like 80 or 78, I'm still going to dive into this because it sounds like something I would actually enjoy. But
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's been encouraging that it's scored as high as it has. So happy with that. Grand Prix is squeaky bum time, absolutely. And Hall has joined the clubhouse with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That was his final game on his list. Sitting on a 76 gives him a score of 759. So he is a clean 49 points off the pace. All said and done, he won't be too happy with that. Considering how easy he seems to say it is and that he should be winning it, and yet has been stuck in this Grand Prix with no hope of winning in 3-4 years now. So I don't know where this attitude's come from, where he could just walk it, because he never has looked close to do that.
I mean, I've always felt like, I mean, I've had some bad years, but when I put my effort semi into it, I seem to be able to pick out some semi-reasonable games. And I've had a couple. I mean, obviously, we know the Logan rule's been created, and then last year, and I think for the past sort of 3 or 4 years, I've been there and thereabouts.
Yep.
I'm kind of always knocking on that door. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's easy. I suspect that for you it would be, with your infinite wisdom. If you did it, it would be.
Well, I'd cheat as well. I've said this before. That's why I don't do it. I would. Not only am I the most intelligent when it comes to this, I would cheat just to make sure that stays and that it can't be disputed. So I can't be trusted.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you just did your own little like list on the side one year, like irrelevant from everything else, and just picked like 10 games that you thought were going to be the top 10 of the year, and see how kind of close you got, and if you could break 1,000 points. No, it's not possible because there's only 1,000 points there. No. If you could break, I reckon 900.
Yeah, even that's difficult though, because then you've got to get 1090s. It's really tricky. It's like 850, I think, is the record that Biff posted one year. And that's absurd.
Okay, I would like you. I wonder if it's worth doing. But then you put everything on the line, didn't you, to do something like this? Like, you just, like, the infinite wisdom. But it'd be interesting if your 10 would beat whoever won.
Yeah.
Like, I'd like no you don't declare it with no transfers, to see if you could get a list of 10 games that would beat the winner. I don't know. It'd just be an interesting little experiment. I mean, if you don't, you don't. But
I'm going to risk my 100% record. I don't even want a sniff of losing this. So unlikely that Ronnie will sign it off, but he will consider it over a few beers at some point. Speaking of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, now, any interest in this? Considering we both played through Pokemon Arceus. You did, didn't you? Am I talking rubbish? Or did you play it and then bin it halfway through?
I haven't binned it. It's just been on the. It's just found itself. It's been paused. There is still, in the similar way that there was for God of War, an intent
to go back
and do it, and I still want to complete it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I must admit, it hasn't pulled me in the same way I was expecting it to, and the way that it did for you.
Yeah. I mean, I had major issues with it, though, as you fondly remember. I've ranted about performance.
I'm just struggling with that system. It's
old. It's creaking badly. And Game Freak are just. I've seen Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That looks really good for something on the Switch, but that's. These Pokemon games that look close to that, and I just wonder. I think I said this before. I believe it's one of the most profitable or gross earning IPs in the world, and you've got clearly not a lot of budget being put into it, because you can make games on the Switch look decent. They won't ever look like, bloody God of War or whatever you want to play, Gears 5, anything like that, which looks stunning still to this day. But they can look better than what Game Freak and Nintendo are pushing out on the Pokemon. I just think, come on, put a hand in pocket and put some effort into that.
Even if I could forgive the graphics and all the mechanical elements of it, just like that quest system and everything. It's just so.
Yeah, it was just a pain in the ass.
Like, all you got to do is just give me some sort of story and ability to select quests and guide me to do it. I'm not asking for a lot. Those are the things that are grating at me more on it. I find it hard to play.
Yeah.
And a Pokemon game shouldn't be hard to play. It should be pick up, off you go, job done. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm surprised that someone hasn't done some sort of big budget version of it, because surely it will still sell well.
Yeah, it's a weird. I don't know what's going on with. I don't think Pokemon's ever going to go multi-platform. I think Nintendo own part of the Pokemon. It's all a bit strange the setup and whatnot, but they could still do better on the Switch. Is what I'm angling at.
Yeah,
is
fair
that
enough,
what's being churned out is of barely acceptable quality, and we've seen other games who do big open worlds produce something that you think, well, that's about as good as it will look, but still, it can be done. It's not it ain't got to require bloody a genie to come along and save it. But the main reason why I'm not looking at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is not just because it looks a little bit old and bit scruffy. I don't need to be playing 2 Pokemons in less than 12 months. I don't know what this scheduling's all about. I can't wrap my head around that, other than the fact I'm sure they both will sell equally as well. So actually, when the bottom line's looked at and the bean counters look, they'll say, well, it didn't affect us. But from a consumer, I'm like, I've got almost zero interest in going back into Pokemon, a new Pokemon game for at least another year. And yet we've got one in less than 12 months. What are they playing at?
Yeah, I don't know. I do find it bizarre. I must admit, when I saw that comment, I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it was coming this year. I was like,
who's
what?
asking for more already?
Well, they are, though. That's the thing. They'll still... I don't know. Maybe there will be a fatigue on this. I don't know. I wouldn't expect so. I still think business-wise, they'll do well, but I can't see how this... giving the other one 18 months to breathe wouldn't yield more results. But suppose with game development, you're not earning any money till you ship a product. So every day that ticks on that's not on the shelves, you ain't getting any money back in. So it's never considered, is it, by us fucking Burks? Just sit here criticising it, and whilst they watch the cash roll in, that's how it typically works.
I think it's because we look at it from a purist perspective, don't we, rather than a business and a product. It's always going to be the way.
Absolutely. Let's move into some items and out of the FGL area. The Game Awards have come. The nominations have come, I should say. The Game Awards show hasn't. And once again, there's people crying. This feels like Groundhog Day. Every year, the nominees come out and people cry. This game ain't on it. That game's on it. Why is this game not on it? Last year it was Forza Horizon, wasn't it? People were wailing about that, wailing about a franchise where Microsoft don't even think that highly of it because they let it get fucking delisted after a few years because of the licensing. So they don't give a toss about the prestige of that really when you come and think about it. But that was the big one last year. This year, I'm not seeing people crying about stuff missing. It's more that Stray is on the list. People are livid that a game like Stray has made the nominees. So just for those that there's fucking 31 awards up for grabs. We're not going to go through them all. Game of the Year is the big one. We're going to focus on that. I think God of War has the most nominations with 10, which is ahead of Elden Ring and Horizon, which are both on 7. So they're the ones that have got the most category nominations. But the big Game of the Year nominations are A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And there's crying. For people that don't understand how this list of 5 or 6 come along, it's selected from... So essentially, Jeff goes out to 100 plus outlets across the globe, not just Europe, not just America, and says, give me a list of 5, and the games that get with the most numbers go on the list. If there's a tie, I think they actually extend the nominees to 6 or 7 or whatever it is. So Jeff ain't deciding this, because every time this comes out, like, oh, Jeff, you fucking cunt, what are you doing? He's like, I ain't involved. I'll give it to Easy Allies. I'll give it to IGN. I'll give it to GameSpot. I'll give it to Giant Bomb. I'll give it to Game Informer. I'll give it to The Guardian. I'll give it to Gaming Bible, even. They're on there. Metro Boys, they're involved. Video Games Chronicle. He gives it all to them. He says, you decide. I'll just count the numbers here.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is there's a list of them on the website. People can go and have a look. But it really is global. Now, there's a lot more US than UK outlets in there, and they are the 2 big ones. But you've got outlets from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, China, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, India, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, the Middle East, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Romania, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Thailand, and Turkey. There's a couple more in there. Canada. That don't seem as out there, Canada. That seems like more... I can understand, You know, they speak a lot of English and whatnot, and a bit of French. But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of diverse opinions that are coming in here, and it doesn't surprise me that the list never makes anyone happy. Are we ever going to see a nominees list where everyone goes, "Yep, that's exactly right"? Because the way I see it is, people just want their own personal biases on there. When that's not represented, they cry foul and say it's corrupt. It's a shit system. And I'm like, well, what better system is there really? There's a lot of input being taken from the entire world. Like, I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. What more can you do?
People only want what they want, is what I've discovered, isn't it? Like, they want the game that they put on there, and if it's not there, then it must be wrong.
It's like all these like football awards and everything that people get. Everyone's always crying that
Ballon d'Or is always a fucking joke.
Oh, what's see all the Spurs fans going, Harry Kane, come on! Like, what are we doing?
Get that cart horse off the shortlist.
Everyone's always got their own biases towards what they prefer or they support or whatever it is. But yeah, to your point, it's kind of like canvassed from different countries, different outlets and things. So what complaint can you have? That's a bit harsh on Stray. Like,
that's what I thought.
It was kind of a little mini like fad, wasn't it? Where like everyone was sort of playing it and stuff, and everyone seemed to say, well, if you like animals and cats generally, you'll quite like this. It's just a harmless.
It was like so wholesome.
Yeah.
And it's getting called out as like, oh, what's that doing on there? And look, I don't know why people care I don't know why people give a shit about these 6 games that are on a list. Make your own awards, and then you get your own way, won't you?
Make your own.
Like, seriously, it doesn't matter, does it? Like, this is people keep going, well, there's millions of people that see this, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but don't take them so seriously. They're not there. They're not the Oscars. And even though the Oscars has turned into people slapping each other, so I don't know how long that's going to last as a prestigious event. How's that getting signed off, Will? What's he up to now?
Yeah. Nothing that I've seen. Nothing. Well, what is it? I Am Legend 2, apparently.
No.
Well, I've heard.
The first one wasn't even good. Have you read the book on that?
No.
It's completely different. I won't go into the details as to why, but it's actually, if you read the book, you're like, oh my god, they really did butcher this. Anyway, getting off track.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't care too much about this. I don't understand why Stray's getting crapped on. There are issues with this, as we've said. Like, you're never going to get everyone's opinion in there. Like, the November cut-off time is very stupid as well. So games like Pentiment aren't eligible. Callisto Protocol, which isn't out, isn't eligible. Midnight Suns, which is coming late, isn't eligible. And they go, well, it can go in next year's awards, so don't worry about
Forgotten
it.
about. Recency bias.
Absolutely. Halo Infinite, where's that this year? That missed last year's one. Nope, in the bins.
That don't deserve to get in anyway.
Some will say it didn't deserve it. But I reckon if it had come out within the gap, there was like a 3-week period where everyone loved it.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, the issues aren't that bad. And it's got worse because the issues haven't been properly addressed and the content's dried up. But I think there was a month period there that it would have rode its wave and got in there. But obviously, it's hasn't been able to last. And I think it happened with Smash Brothers as well. That missed the cut-off point. And I was really hoping that the next Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, the next Zelda game, would miss the cut-off, like be in December, and just see, to see actually what would transpire. Would
whether they change the date or something of the cut-off? Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping happens. But I think Cyberpunk was, everyone was like, well, that's going to be missed, and it came out and crapped the bed, so it wasn't an issue for people. Anyway. What do you think will take the title out of those 6? You've got A Plague Tale, Elden Ring, God of War, Horizon, Stray, Xenoblade Chronicles. Not what you want to win. What do you think these quote-unquote bozos, as people describe them, will vote for? And it's a 90% media vote and a 10% fan vote. That's how the winners are decided. The nominations are decided by the jury only. But the actual awards is a 10% saviour part for, the locals that are going to vote on it. But any inclination over what will take the championship?
I'd find it hard to look past Elden Ring, just purely because of it was a fad for a while, wasn't it? Everyone was playing it.
Fucking
People
ages,
that didn't even really get into any of the sort of Soulsborne games or anything were kind of interested in playing it and stuff. So,
I'd be interested if those people liked it though, or didn't just play it and go, "Fuck me,"
well,
like, and just got
Doctor
caught up in
Disrespect
the.
said it was one of the highlights of his year.
Well,
And it's not his bag, and he
COD.
loved it. Well, that's what I mean. It's bread and butter, but he continues to rave about it. See, I just think it's. I mean, it's not my bag, obviously. Wouldn't be my personal pick, but
no.
yeah, I would say God of War, but I kind of feel like it might just come too soon for it.
Yeah, if I was betting, I'd say Elden Ring. And I think if Elden Ring doesn't get it, you're going to see a lot of crying again. Like,
Yeah.
because the last time God of War 2018 come out, it was alongside Red Dead Redemption 2, and God of War God of War snuck the title, and people were livid about that.
What would you say?
Out of
If you had a choice between Red Dead 2 and God of War.
So initially I said Red Dead 2. But for some reason, I look back and I think God of War 2018 was just the package of like the modern sort of third person action adventure game. So I felt like it got. I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? I've recently played God of War.
I'm finding that one really tough. But I didn't. I've obviously played an upgraded version, if you like, slightly upgraded version, which is a bit unfair on Red Dead. But
I think I'll stick to my initial and say there's a reason why I said Red Dead Redemption 2. There was clearly something in the waters for that year, like time.
It was epic.
Yeah, it was. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But there's some weird things of that. But there's an open world. I don't think anything looked as good as that. Like
it looked and played brilliantly, and that storyline and the depth and everything. I mean, again, it's kind of like two of the pinnacles of those sort of games.
Yeah.
And they are different games, clearly, quite different. And it's really difficult to put them alongside each other. But I just thought that was interesting to say. I would probably say Red Dead 2.
Well, I think that's why people were upset when God of War snuck it. Because the other thing you have to remember is when a platform exclusive bags it as well, you immediately pissed off 30%,
half the population.
or half of whoever it is. They're already crying because they ain't been able to play it or haven't chose to play it or didn't rate it because it had a blue label on it. So that's what gets under people's skin, really, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this year's one, I think Elden Ring will get it. I wouldn't put it past Ragnarok pulling off the shock, but I just think that the amount of praise that was heaped on Elden Ring, like revolutionary, generational, and some of it I kind of subscribe to, about 70% of the greatness of that, but it runs like shit. So
did you complete it?
Yeah. Unlike these, so did Adkins, so did Adcock, so did Salmon.
Yeah.
Biff got about 80% through it, then chucked it off. But they all used the guides. They all were cheating. So.
And you used none?
Used none, and it was to my detriment because there are parts of that game where you just miss because there's no way you would work out where to go. So I probably missed a good 20% of it.
Really?
But, yeah. It was good. Like there were times when I was like completely addicted to it, but it ran like absolute donkey shit for compared to the standards we've got now. I think if you go back last gen, it would have been par for the course, but it was so choppy. Really, in comparison to the slick stuff. And when you get that wrong, I kind of immediately think, well, how can I give you my full attention and praise when you're getting the basics wrong? And then you've got all the usual kind of soul stuff that will grind people, like the menus are a pain in the ass to get in and out of. Just trying to equip a new item is like a chore. Like, there's all this weird stuff that gets sidelined because of the other stuff that was so great about it. It's one of those weird games that has clear flaws, but the other side of it is that you've got an expansive kind of open world and great combat, but not for everyone, as we've mentioned, because they're just.
Well, I mean,
it's bloody hard, and it ain't going to hold your hand. But then that's now seen as a good point because people don't want their hands held. I'm reading. Doesn't have any waypoints. They said it does. It does have waypoints, so don't lie about that either. That's what they said.
I don't remember if we spoke much about Elden Ring or done a review on it.
I did it with Adkins, pissed up.
Yeah.
I think I said all this, but
yeah.
I
didn't realise it was still sort of a wound there.
Oh, it's not a wound. I just liked because people just praise it like nothing's wrong with it, and I'm like,
Yeah, they do.
let's just be honest for a little while, like, and don't lie about there not being any waypoints, because there are. There are map markers in there. They do appear.
Let's get full facts on it.
Well, that's what we might have to do. Employ them to start combing through the bollocks that people write. But no, I think I gave it a gold. So I wasn't, that's
Yeah.
Great game, really, really great. Greater than the sum of its parts, I guess, is the way you might describe it. But we'll see how things pan out. We won't be doing our game of the year until next year sometime.
Which I think's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
let everything come out, let the dust settle.
If people want to catch up on stuff, they can do. And
imagine if a game come out on like the 31st of December.
Yeah.
Takes you God knows how many hours to complete it, and it's getting sidelined.
It's not. It's what I mean. That's the big thing about this Game Awards is the cut off. I think it's stupid, and it is a media award at the end of the day. It's the critics that are employed by these outlets that decide this. So it's.
Yeah.
Take that with a pinch of salt. The developers have their own kind of one in GDC and DICE, which happen in like usually March time, and that's the developers' view. And they've sometimes they match up, sometimes they don't. It's like it doesn't matter. Try not to take it personally. They're not trying to wind you up, unlike our awards where we do try and rattle cages. So get up them. Right, I've delayed it, but I feel like we've got to unleash the hound again.
Yeah.
Call of Duty Warzone. Is it called Call of Duty Warzone 2.0? Is that the actual name of it?
It's just Warzone 2.0.
Warzone 2.0. First question.
Yeah.
Is this a separate download, or is it part of Modern Warfare 2 in that if you go and play it, will it say you're playing Modern Warfare 2, or will it say you're playing Warzone 2.0? Because I ain't seen anyone playing Warzone.
No, it says Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Fucking hell! They've done it again. I thought the whole point of doing this was to decouple it from a game so that it can kind of sit on its own, so the other games can put their... Because wasn't that a problem for them, like trying to backwards engineer Black Ops into it and all that shit?
Yeah, I mean, so you go into the menu, so you boot up...
It's semantics, really, but Ronnie ain't happy.
Yeah, I mean, it should... It's tricky, right? Because if you don't buy the game... Like, you don't buy Modern Warfare, you download Warzone, and when you boot it up, it still says you're playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which technically you are. You're playing a game mode in it, but it's known as Warzone.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they should be...
Does that mean it doesn't have its own achievements, then?
There's no achievements.
Does Fortnite?
Not in Warzone. No. Not from memory. No, so these from memory don't have achievements. Would happily be corrected.
Yeah.
I haven't got an achievement so far on Warzone.
Well, you got to be good though.
There is that. I would like an achievement just for taking part personally.
So Fortnite does have achievements worth 1,000 game score.
Don't remember getting any of that.
No, but I'm assuming it's not possible for Warzone because, like you said, it's a game mode within Modern Warfare 2. And if you don't own Modern Warfare, hang on, I'm saying Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
Is that correct? It's tied to that game, not OG Modern Warfare.
Correct.
Right, okay. I'm not blowing it there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
I'll shut up now because I keep interrupting.
So yeah, when you boot it up, you've got the three tiles of games. You've got the multiplayer, you've got the DMZ, and you've got Battle Royale.
Yep.
So they're the three options. And then you select the Battle Royale and in you go, you're in there. You've got separate loadouts. It is a separate kind of thing. It's not linked to what you've got, unless I mean it is, right?
It's winding me up hearing about it, but
because your weapons are all leveled up the same, like as they are in multiplayer. So it is intrinsically linked, but it is a separate game mode within it with its separate kind of stats and everything. So yeah, so I guess we start with launch night. So you asked if it's a separate download. I don't actually know. So
you've got the game,
because I've got the game. But I did on the 6th. I think it was the morning of the 16th. I did have a 68 gig update or something ridiculous. So that might have been it. But that's all the Battle Pass to and various different other elements. So I guess it is a separate download. If I was guessing it, I presume so. And yeah, so 16th, wait for it to go live. It's live, trying to get in a game, dearie me. That
No
was a
good.
challenge. Well,
There's
I
enough
think
space
I've
for
done
100 people. What are they?
150 this time.
That's gone up then.
150
Blimey.
poor souls
Being funneled into that hellhole.
being funneled into that. Yeah, so I mean, they've chucked out all the options there. So you've got solos, duos, third person trios. You've got unhinged trios, which I'm not quite sure what that is, and then you've got quads.
Yep.
I mean, so they chucked it all out there at once. But yeah, it took us a while to get into a game. I must admit, there was problems with the social panel, so you couldn't see who's in your social thing to invite people and stuff. And there was usual menu troubles, and you try and get into a game and someone get booted out, and it's all this kind of stuff. So I think we ended up getting into a game at around 8:30 when we all jumped on at 7. So it was about an hour to an hour and a half of fucking about.
So what do you do in that situation? I'm fascinated by what happens now. Do you just sit in that chat just talking shit until it lets you...
Yeah, like winding each other up or getting frustrated, like whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're just sitting there with finger up arse. Like you're trying to figure out how to get everyone back in the party. And then you get booted out, and then you get onto a loading screen. You go waiting for data centers or whatever. So you sit there with that screen for 5 minutes, then you restart the game, and then you go back in. You get in a party, you boot out the game, you get into a lobby. It'd be a laggy lobby, so you'd have to pull out, and you rinse and repeat that. So there was an element of frustration the first night, but we did get a couple of games in and everything, and got to explore the new map Al Mazrah, which seems to be, or at least it feels, a lot bigger than
150
previous.
people now. I need to make sure there's enough room for them all.
Yeah, so it feels bigger, like much bigger in terms of overall size and everything. So yeah, it was really just kind of getting used to that, and then I think probably put in about 8 to 10 hours by the time we've recorded this, I think, and it's a different battle royale experience in some ways
from Warzone.
Yes,
people running around shooting each other. How can it be different? Educate me.
Yeah. So the ultimate purpose and everything remains the same. It's to be the last person or team standing.
Yep.
But there's some differences, I guess. So going back to the original Warzone, I suppose, and the previous incarnation of it, it was a very fast-paced game. Or I say it was very fast-paced. For a battle royale, it felt quite fast-paced.
That's because you had Hall leading the team, just charging into battle, not being strategic about it.
Well, I think the movement in the last game, and this is where we could end up talking for half an hour, and I've got to be very careful. So the movement in the last game was a lot more fluid, I guess is the way to put it. So you could do slide cancelling and things to get yourself to move quicker. And it just felt like it was a bit more... Like you could be more athletic and aggressive in your play without getting punished for it. Like you actually got actively rewarded for being a more athletic player. I think is probably how I'd word it. In the new one, they've removed slide cancelling. And there was also something called bunny hopping, where you could just basically like jump side to side to side, and there was basically different mechanics, and they've removed a load of them in this game to make it, a bit more realistic, I guess, in some ways. I mean, I use that term very loosely, but you wouldn't tend to see people running across a desert, sliding around on the floor continuously. So they've removed that. So I think because they've removed an element of like aggressiveness and the ability to be so quick, it makes people naturally a bit slower paced in their game plan, a bit more calculated. And I just think the way that the map's designed, they've made some other subtle changes as well. So it used to be when you dropped into Warzone OG, you used to just get down, get contracts, go around, loot money, do whatever you could to get 10 grand together to get a loadout drop. Then you've got your loadout and you can run around like a lunatic with all your guns and everything. Well, they've basically removed that. So you can't buy loadout drops. You have to do things within Warzone to be able to get rewarded with a loadout drop, or you have to wait quite late into the game.
Well, it just starts chucking them out randomly and to create areas of battle where people are likely to flood towards it and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they've basically removed that kind of initial drop down, get a load of cash, like
Yeah.
get a thingy, get all the UAVs in and everything. It just becomes instant carnage. Like the people play slower because they don't have their weapons that they're used to. You're relying much more on the ground loot.
And just
Um,
it sounds stupid. A loadout
yeah,
drops the loadout you've predetermined somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not just
Yeah.
random. You go, fucking hell, shotgun.
yeah, with all your attachments,
Okay,
fully
right.
leveled up guns.
Gotcha.
Like
So that's what you're after, really. You want to get that as soon as you can possibly get it, ideally.
Yeah, exactly. So you basically can't do that, and if you do want to get earlier than loadout drops, you have to do like these mini in-world events, which are called strongholds, and you basically have to go, and it's a load of bots. You clear out all the bots, you defuse the bomb, and then you get a loadout from that. So that's the way they're trying to get you to do it, is to actually take part in the world.
Little PvE elements.
Little PvE elements, rather than you just running around getting cash and doing a few little contracts to do it. So it slows the game down because you're having to do these things to get your favorite weapons. And they've also removed the amount of cash drops there are. So cash is a lot harder to come by.
Yeah.
So to get cash, you have to do, again, more in-world events and contracts. They're really the way to get cash quickly. So it used to be the case that if your teammate died, you could come back, run around for a minute, get enough cash together and buy another teammate back. But it's more impactful now when you don't have as much cash. So it's basically they've made
that Gulag got them out of there, or whatever it's called. Gulag?
So you can also, the Gulag's still there. It used to be a 1v1, but they've now changed that to a 2v2. So you're paired up with someone else and you take on another two, which is, again, is quite interesting. I like it. Like, it's an interesting dynamic change. And they've also introduced an element there where if all four of you take on a juggernaut that appears, it appears about 10, 20 seconds into the Gulag, then you all get released.
Right, okay.
Because they've introduced proximity chat. So if you're not in a party, you can talk to the other people that are in the lobby. And communicate and do that kind of stuff. So there's more changes. So you used to be able to just go to a buy station and buy X amount of UAVs, as many as you want. You could, if you had another 20 grand, you could buy 5 UAVs and get an advanced UAV and see where everyone is. Now the buy points only have finite amounts of items in them. Ooh. So you can only buy, say, 3 UAVs from a buy point. So it's not a constant UAVs in the air showing your position. Again, which just makes it a slower gameplay because people don't know where everyone is. So yeah, it's overall they've kind of made some changes in a number of areas that kind of it's the way that I'd say it's more like PUBG now. Like they've moved it more to a slower looting, tactical way of moving through the map. I mean, you still get in a lot of firefights and everything. Like, there's still plenty of action, but it's not like all-out carnage, basically, at times.
And how do you feel about that? Is that positive? Is that positive for you and the others you're playing with, or is there a bit of skepticism about how much you'll end up enjoying it long term?
I think it's better because basically the UAVs and things used to always be around, and you basically had to have because you had to get your load out so you could get ghosts so you didn't appear on all the UAVs. So you kind of it was driven by that.
Yeah.
But because it's less prevalent in the game, you can kind of be a bit more patient. You're not so focused on the loadout. It's just a different dynamic. I mean, I much prefer less like. You used to just get always pushed constantly. Like people are just like a load of UAVs and kill streaks and things. You just get pushed all the time, and you just be it'd just be constant. It'd be relentless at times. It's just it feels just a little bit slower, a little bit more tactical. You know, I prefer the changes. I think they're interesting. I think it's an interesting change for a Call of Duty game mode because Call of Duty is always about fast and frantic. So historically, with all the Call of Duties, they've done things to speed up encounters and get you back into the fight as quickly as they can. But they've actually actively slowed down Warzone, which I find interesting. It's not what you'd expect typically from a Call of Duty.
No.
But yeah, I must admit, I'm liking the changes. I think the map is a much bigger improvement from I wouldn't say it's probably on par with Verdansk, like the original Warzone map, but it's far, far better than Caldera was.
So that's gone Caldera now. Is it just this new one, and that's all you're playing with at the moment?
I don't know whether Warzone 1.0 is still live or not. I actually don't know that.
Yeah,
I think it.
I think it is, but it's not like Overwatch, which I think they got rid of once Overwatch 2 came out. Like you don't.
Did they really? They got rid of Overwatch?
Well, they were planning to do it. I don't know if they actually. I think if you go to play it now, it goes Overwatch 2 and you free to play.
And download that.
Yeah. But
I think I read that they are planning to basically close it down.
It's
I
a
think
hassle
there might be
to
an
keep that
overlap.
fucking running. But
Well, yeah, you got over it.
They want to give people a chance, don't they, to get on this and try it out. Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a much more positive experience than what I've had with the multiplayer. I mean, it's been the usual, trials and tribulations. They've changed the battle pass system as well, which I should add. Yeah. So you can be more selective around the path you take through your battle pass. It's not just 1 to 100. You can pick sectors that you'd rather go to, and select. And rather than it being level based, you earn tokens with experience, and then with the tokens you earn, you can get things from the battle pass. Yeah. So they've changed that around slightly, which for me works. Okay. I'm fine with that. So yeah, I think overall they've made a few changes which I quite like. I mean, it's not without criticism. No. I think I should add that. The way that they've changed the loot and the visibility of the loot is pretty poor. Like everything just highlights white, and it's not visible like when you drop stuff. Another thing I should add, so you've now got backpacks. So you've got specific loot elements that you need to fill up, and once it's full, you can't carry anymore.
Okay.
They've just made loads of little changes, I think, is the way I'd put it. So you used to just run over people's bodies and you just look at the ground and swap your weapons out really quickly. But now you have to stop, search their backpack, see what they've got in it, move it over into yours and equip it and stuff. Like in every way, they've slowed it down. And that's what I mean when it's like PUBG. It's like when you kill someone in PUBG, you have to go up to them, loot and move all their loot over, equip stuff and do things like that.
Yeah.
And that's what they've done in this. But yeah, I think that there's some bits that they need to sort out. Like the marking of things isn't as clear as it could be, and the loot system needs a little bit of refinement. But overall, the changes I think personally are really positive.
And then are the others, the people you're playing with? I assume it's like a Pee-wee and a cop and a rotating door of that crowd. Maybe Kebab Man getting involved now and again. How have they received it? Are they happy, or are they bitching and moaning and complaining about it being too slow?
No, I don't think anyone's really moaning about it. I think everyone's feels. Yeah, I mean it's a shock, right? I mean you'd expect to have people that didn't like it, but I think it's generally been well received. There's no sort of huge criticisms. I mean the lobbies are still a bit laggy at times. I think some of the PC crowd are having optimization issues and things.
Fuck 'em.
So I would note that it's not. It's been seamless now, really, other than a few laggy games that I've had over the past couple of days. But that seems to have sorted itself out. I think largely it seems and feels pretty seamless technically at the minute. I think there's definitely a few bits they can improve on, but overall it feels to me like a positive change. It's just it'll just be interesting to see how it develops. I think even now I'm noticing, like even when the first few games we dropped in on, it was very kind of quiet, not a lot happening, everyone's very tentative, and I've noticed over the past couple of days that people are becoming more aggressive and that things are happening. So I think it'll be interesting to see as people get more familiar with the map, the game, the mechanics, the guns and everything, what kind of materializes, because there's no outright gun meta or anything like that at the moment. It's kind of all just a bit, everyone's trying everything out, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So it'll be interesting over the next sort of few weeks, month or so, to see what kind of comes out of it.
Yeah. And so hang on, I'm right in saying you've got Warzone is like the main Battle Royale mode, or just Battle Royale. You say there's two other modes, or just one other mode, DMZ, and is there another?
Yeah, well, you've got your bog standard multiplayer, and I should add as part of this, I think they've added...
There's normal multiplayer in Warzone, just...
No. Well, this is what I mean. So you go into the main screen of Modern Warfare, and it goes, right. You've got your multiplayer, you've got your DMZ, you've got Battle Royale.
Gotcha. So DMZ is the new one. That's the only new mode coming as part of 2.0. Okay.
Yes, they've added DMZ, which I've only played one game of so far, but that's an escape from Tarkov. I don't even know what you really call it. These sort of
like
get in, loot,
extraction
get out
type job, isn't it? Yeah. Well, so you've played one game, and I don't expect you to sit here for half hour talking about that. Maybe next time, if you've played a couple more, you'll have a bit more of a a solid opinion on it. But promising or not really of interest, considering battle royales the bread and butter of these Warzone adventures.
It's interesting because there is a new gun that they've introduced as part of this, right? And it is tied. I think they've said that you will be able to buy it in the store, right?
Yeah, of course you can buy it.
It's tied to a specific mission, I think, in DMZ where you have to extract it.
Yeah.
So you need to go defeat this guy who's got this gun and extract the weapon, and then you'll have it in your inventory.
Yeah.
So what I'm expecting to develop is, as people start getting this new gun out of DMZ, that will become the meta in Warzone.
You'll be wanting to go in there,
and you'll have to try and get it to be competitive in Warzone, and you'll either have to troll through doing this DMZ mission, which will no doubt be a real pain in the arse, or you'll have to fork out some dough for it. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it is mostly AI. What we encountered a few other players in there.
Yeah,
but it's mostly AI.
It's the
missions.
dark zone.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, basically. But the bots are capable. Like, it's almost like.
And I guess there's no teaming up with other teams. They're always enemies, because in the dark zone you can kind of meet people and be like.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. Theoretically, you could, but it's just
It's not wide like the Division.
Practically, no. Practically, if you see it's like shoot on sight. Yeah. There's no shoot on sight.
No negotiation. It's just blow them away.
No negotiation. Yeah, blow them away. So yeah, it's quite challenging. Like they'll put you down.
Yeah.
And especially they seem to swarm you out of nowhere. So I think that I definitely need to play a little bit more of it. But again, it looks like a nice little addition on the side to something that I wasn't really expecting.
No, it's a nice little side menu to.
Just a little frustrating. They've put a gun unlock behind it.
Yeah.
I think it's not too nice.
No, well, you know what they'll say. You can go off and buy it, and then that will solve your issue that you've
already paid £58 for the game.
Well, they said, what
are we doing?
What are you doing that for? Because you could have got this Warzone part for free. So we've given you every option. You've chosen the most expensive one, sir. Now get in there and get your gun.
It does make me realise. I mean, I did semi-enjoy playing some sort of like pub, like PvP games, because I haven't done that really for a while. But I soon realised why now. It does become dull as dishwater after a little while doing that. There's very little variety. It's quite infuriating, and I was pretty pleased when Warzone come out. I had a good couple of weeks in those PvP ones, but my comments really still stand that a large number of the maps are not very good.
So they may well have pulled it out the fire somewhat. The Call of Duty brand name. It's sort of.
I was concerned.
Yeah, because you weren't happy couple of weeks back.
No,
and this is.
I don't think many was, but I think they've definitely done something, or at least my early thoughts would be they've definitely done something positive with Warzone.
Yeah,
like they haven't just my slight worry was they're just bolt shit on, as I've said before, and then you've got Warzone 1 plus fucking loads of other shit and all sorts, but they haven't. They've actually stripped it back a bit, which is interesting.
Wow. Maybe they are listening somewhere on the various Discord communities they've got. Stay at those.
I'd be interested. I haven't really I haven't watched any streams of it or anything, because I didn't really want that to pollute my mind.
Yeah.
I wanted to get this unadulterated experience of what I thought about it. I didn't want to be poisoned by other people's thoughts when I went in there. So it's very conscious to avoid that and just kind of figure it out for myself. And I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying the experience of it. Looks nice. There's another thing I should add. They've added like homages to old Modern Warfare 2 maps.
Yeah.
So do you remember the airport one? I don't know how much you played it, but there's an airport, so that's there. There's shipments there.
And
there's there's high rise. There's various other old maps that they've included in there, and some might say, "Oh, you're really hashing it," but it's nice to go through Warzone and go, I recognise this map from something that I played 10 years ago.
So it's just
a
part
nice
of the
little
map.
touch.
It's not its own map. It's just you'll stumble across the
Yeah.
environment of
It's
shipment.
seamless.
Yeah, oh, that's
It's
nice.
seamless.
That
Like
is
you
cool.
don't even know. You'll land somewhere or whatever, or go to a bar, and you'll go, "Hang on a minute,
I recognise all
this
this.
looks like this looks like a map I played."
Ah.
So no doubt they'll be coming in the future to multiplayer. But I just thought that was quite a nice little
Yeah.
thing to do, like a little nod to the old maps in there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, overall, pretty good experience so far. I can report back positive things, which is good.
Yeah, that's what we want to hear. I mean, as much as people love to moan, no one wants to be sitting there getting annoyed at playing a game. We all want to say, cool, 10 out of 10, but obviously it's not the way things work. So it's good to hear some positivity coming out of the Call of Duty camp after a 45-minute dressing down that you gave them a few episodes ago. Well,
Deservedly so.
Well, yeah, that's it. You get what you deserve in this life usually. That's it. We're going to transition to some game impressions. And in honour of the Game Awards, I played it before the Game Awards nominees, but A Plague Tale Requiem, which is one of the nominees for Game of the Year, I played through on PC and on Game Pass. So I sat down with Logan to share my full impressions and thoughts of that, having played the original. So you'll get a bit of cards on the table there. But we will see everybody on the next episode. But more importantly, we will see you on the other side. Here we are then, back with some game impressions to close out this week's Idle Game Chat. I'm joined by the nearly man, the resident referee, Logan. He's going to be asking me the questions about A Plague Tale Requiem. I think that's how you say that word.
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough for me. I think it is Requiem. I don't know. It must mean something from somewhere. I don't know.
I did look it up before because I think isn't there an Alien versus Predators film called AVP Requiem? I think that was the first time I remember seeing it.
In my head, I see it. I think it's like a reckoning or something, but I don't know whether that could be nonsense.
Yeah, it's saying, what's it saying here? Because it's Wikipedia's not to be trusted. Well, it's kind of all sorts of garbage here. A Requiem was held for the dead. What's this nonsense? Musical composition? Well, it's not that, is it? Let's have English meaning. Let's get that one in there. I think it's something to do with a mass equals a Christian ceremony at which people honour and pray for a dead person. Not sure that fits the bill, having played it. I don't know. I don't know if they come up with these words and think, well, I'll just chuck it on there. The meaning doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, it seems to have some sort of like. So especially around a mass was for the souls of the dead. A requiem was held for.
Yeah, it has to be a mass.
It's like a group or like a group meeting.
Yeah,
I see it as, or like.
Wow.
An act of token of remembrance. He designed the epic as a requiem for his wife. So
Wow.
I don't know. mean, it's not helped, is it? I mean, we could be here all day trying.
Are we going to start putting up requiems in the gallery to say, right, to remember this game, we're going to put up a requiem of it, like old classics? I don't know. Anyway, that's what it's called. It's a follow-up to A Plague Tale Innocence, which makes more of a. I don't know. It made more sense to me. The requiem thing has thrown me off a little bit. But
I actually didn't know it was a follow-up. I presumed it was its own game in its own right. It shows you my ignorance of this game is going to be exposed on this review.
Well, that's fair enough. That's sometimes useful. But I guess sort of cards on the table, Jobby. I played the original because Ronnie wouldn't have allowed it anyway.
When was that?
I think I got 2019 in my head. So it wasn't actually that long ago. That's the key thing here. It's actually quite a quick turnaround for a game of this ilk. A Plague Tale Innocence. And I checked the log that I have. I think I reviewed it in 2020 sometime. And back then, this game, the structure was a little bit different in terms of recognition, but the fundamentals were the same. The OG didn't even get itself a bronze.
Oh, chucked it in the bin.
Now in my head,
It was
I'd
different
forgot.
though, wasn't it?
Well,
Was the grading system different?
it was still
I
we were
mean,
still using numbers. We was using numbers, but the grading was assigned to a number rather than
yeah,
it being just a whatever you do jobby. So I think 7 would have been the bronze target, and it got a 6.5 on the old one. So it would have been it wouldn't have gone in it wouldn't have gone in the gallery. In my head, I gave it a bronze, and then when I checked it, I was like, oh. That's it.
On it.
That's interesting.
Went back for more in a sequel.
Well, odd behaviour, really, when you think of it that way. I think the main thing was, I remember I got the original for Christmas, and by that time it was like 12 quid as well. It was a bit later in the year. It'd gone on sale quite a bit. And I think the only reason I ended up not giving it that sort of level of a rating or recommendation or whatever you want to call it, an award or lack of a reward, was because when I checked the RRP of it, it was 45 UK pounds. And I think that's what doomed it missing out on a spot and therefore not making it into the backdated gaming gallery. It felt lower budget, but it wasn't that long. I remember it being like 8 or 9 hours long, and I'm not even sure if I subscribe to that philosophy nowadays. I think it's something we've discussed before. It may well have fared better had I had a crack at it more recently, because outside of someone coming along and saying this game's 400 quid, and you think, well, that's silly money, that's clearly can't be. I do just sort of look at the game as it is and think, well, what's the quality of it? And try and ignore other factors. Like, I don't even like to go, small team, have they punched above their weight? Because I don't know for sure. That's a double A project, not a triple A project. How do you know that? How do they know that? They don't send you the figures. So I'll try and just keep it out of it and just think, what's the game? Is it worth it? I think sometimes, and I don't think it happens very often, there might be the exception to the rule where there's, like I said, if something comes along at 200, 300, 400 pounds for a game, you'd be like, hang on a minute. But generally, I'll try and keep that out of it. So it may well have fared better, is what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way.
Yeah, I think recently, or at least I say recently, the past couple of years, I know that you and I have spoken about this at length, but essentially I think the quality of the time you spent is now really, because otherwise you end up with Assassin's Creed Valhalla and you go, well, there's too much going on there and it's actually a negative. So yeah, I think we'll move on to what is arguably my favourite bit of the reviews, and that is the wording on the store page.
Yes.
I presume you played. Sorry, I don't think we've covered what console or whether this was PC or console.
Well, no, yeah, I was going to either or. I could have just done it in the storefront, but it was on. So I played it on PC Game Pass.
Okay,
it's available on PS5. It's available on Series X and or S. But I played it on PC Game Pass because this is one of the games that we spoke about many weeks ago with the 30 FPS slop on consoles. As we record this, they may well have done a 60 FPS patch by now. I don't think they're doing that just yet. That may happen in the future. But as this is recorded and as I played it, it was 30 FPS slop. And look, my PC's not incredible, like by top tier standards, but it's capable. Like GTX 3080 with a Ryzen 7 5800X. Now, people that know,
it's pretty capable.
People that know what that means will know that's less than 2 years old, pretty good, should last a decent amount of time. So I thought, well, it's a no-brainer to at least launch it on PC Game Pass to see if the PC runs it okay. Targeted 60 FPS, ran at 60 FPS, so I thought, well, I'll stick with it on there. So I actually did play it on PC Game Pass rather than a console. And there's a little nice wrinkle as well. This is something really cool that I discovered on my travels. I plugged in the PS5 DualSense controller. Wasn't really sure whether the haptic feedback or adaptive triggers would work because it's on Xbox's store, but it did.
Bloody hell.
All the haptics were there as though you was playing on a PS5. I was like, that's really cool that I'm playing a PC game, playing it on PC Game Pass, which is an Xbox store, with PlayStation's DualSense controller with the haptics and adaptive triggers. So that was a bit of an enlightenment because I'm like, right, are there other opportunities for other Xbox games or games that are on Game Pass that I'd normally play on the console that have haptics on the PC version, because it doesn't seem there's a blocker there. I assumed Xbox wouldn't have facilitated that, or the API was specific to Steam or something, but clearly not. So
they must have hard coded that when they built the game, and it must have the same code there, or I expect the same codes there on Xbox. It just can't take advantage of it.
It's mapping, isn't it? Yeah, I would assume it would be an easy thing for developers to switch on. If Phil goes, look, I've got this controller coming out, 800 UK pounds, but you get the haptics. So
it's interesting. It's interesting it's there. I didn't expect that. So you've really got the Holy Trinity almost in there: PC, Xbox, and Sony.
Yeah,
we'll leave Nintendo out. They're not part of the Holy Trinity.
No, they're not. They're not allowed to be, unfortunately, just yet. But here's the store description. Anyway, far across the sea, an island calls. Embark on a heart-rending journey into the brutal, breathtaking world twisted by supernatural forces. Amicia and Hugo travel far south to new regions and vibrant cities. There, they attempt to start a new life and control Hugo's curse. But when Hugo's powers reawaken, death and destruction return in a flood of devouring rats. Forced to flee once more, the siblings place their hopes in a prophesized island that may hold the key to saving Hugo. And then there's other bits in there. Sequel to the award-winning A Plague Tale: Innocence. Spectacular grounded tale twisted by supernatural forces. Use a variety of tools, sneak, fight, or unleash hell and rats. Stunning visuals combined with an enthralling score. So they're bigging up a lot of the story there. It's not, doesn't exactly.
There's a lot of words in that.
They love it.
I mean,
that's the
I'm
MO.
struggling to really build a picture of what on earth this is.
Well, look, it's a third-person game, first of all, so over the shoulder.
Do you know what I mean, though? Like, if you read that, it doesn't give you any insight into the game.
No.
Where normally they do a little bit. I mean, it does give you an insight into the story, but I literally listened to that and went, "So what are we doing then?"
Yeah, it's not an easy one, that's for sure. Third person, good focus. Yeah, a focus on narrative and characters. And other bits like that. But these are my sort of games. These third-person games are in my bag. This one's more stealth than it is action, so probably rules you out as a potential candidate for this, since you don't.
Bruins game stealth.
Well, this is basically the game. Now there are options to not do stealth, but for reasons that I'll probably touch upon, the combat and the action parts weaker than just avoiding conflict altogether. And then, of course, it'll throw you into conflicts that you can't avoid, and it's like, you've really focused on the wrong thing here. But that's the name of these games, and that's how they're kind of set up. But yeah, fire away.
So, and this is literally painting the picture for me as well as the audience. What is the purpose of the game?
It's a good question.
I know that's a really broad question, but I'm struggling. I think, like, I know if you said the purpose of what's God of War, what's the purpose of GTA? Like, I understand it's a really all-encompassing question, but really, is this like a sequel? Is this? Would you have need to have played that first one? And is it kind of a linear story?
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a really good question to ask about needing to play the first one, because this is a direct sequel. Okay.
Yeah.
And my first criticism of Requiem is the lack of effort they put into recapping the first game.
Right,
like,
okay.
For old and new players alike, because not everyone's going to go back and play the original, hasn't had time to. As I said, this is a direct sequel. It takes 6 months. It takes place 6 months after the first game. I played the first game, not that long ago, 2020, and I must admit, when I first started playing it, I was lost. I couldn't remember exactly what happened. There were characters that I thought who had died in the first one that were lurking, and I thought, well, we must be in some sort of flashback scene. And it wasn't until like the second chapter I was like, no, this is happening now. And I was like, oh, what the hell? So I had to go back and read a synopsis of what happened. And I was like, oh, right, okay, I get it. But it's a really odd thing to not have any level of recap or catch up in there. Ideally, you'd have like a video sequence of narration over the top.
Yeah.
Amicia and Hugo 6 months ago had to flee their home. Whatever you do, and at worst, you perhaps put a written paragraph in explain the cliff notes and where the characters find themselves now. But Requiem just offers none of that, which is which kind of not doesn't rule out new players turning up, but you're going to miss. It's like a duology, really. It's like they're almost like. I spent 19 hours playing this game, just to put that out there whilst I remember it. And the first one was probably 10-ish. This kind of feels like a 30-hour combined story almost. In that you will want the first 10 hours if you can get it, really, just to build those your familiarity with the characters and the relationships they're having. But a bit of an odd one, if you ask me. I just thought that was a bit of a strange thing not to focus on. Like, you just think, well, people will find it, I guess, but... I don't know. But
it's not very clear, I think, is what we're getting to. So it's kind of like an expectation almost that you remember what went on and played that first one before you picked up the second. And no doubt most people will have played that. But I guess it's still useful in whatever... I mean, there's even... When I watch television series sometimes, they always do a minute at the front that goes, this is what happened last week. And you go, I'm like, why are you telling me this? I literally just watched it.
I need that. I always forget things.
I actually think it's helpful because sometimes so much goes on in between. Sometimes you think my brain's just had to just lose that information. I mean, it happens to me regularly, as we know. My memory can't be trusted, but it is just useful to have that, and especially if you might not have played a game for 2 or 3 years. It's kind of like, well, what do you want from me?
It is tricky for sure, and they did decide not to do that. So I did go back and read it after like a couple of hours of play, and I was like, okay, right. I kind of remember this. I remembered what was happening, but there was some specifics, and I was like, why are you there? What are we doing? And
you forgot the nitty gritty.
Yeah, which
more than anything.
It was one of those things. Once I realised I was lost, it was annoying me, so I had to do something about it. And I'd have preferred if the game just at the intro said, here's the background, and then
a couple of minutes, or whatever, and gives you the option to skip it if you don't want it.
You've made a 15 to 20 hour game here. A couple of minutes at the start to set the groundwork for those coming in new or older fans that have got poor memories like me would have been great. But going back to your point, this is a direct sequel, a continuation. In terms of what the aim of the game is, it's a linear story-based game. In that there's no choices, there's no branching paths. You will follow this story. It's obviously narrative focused because of that, and hinges quite a lot of its moments and some of the better moments tied up in that narrative. And in terms of what these two are playing at, Alicia and Hugo, they're kind of... So it's set 6 months after the previous game where things went a little bit awry. Hugo's afflicted with some level of illness where he's not very well. He's getting worse and worse. And it seems to be giving him some sort of connection to the plague and the rats that's been going on. And really the aim of the game is like, he ain't well and he ain't getting any better, so we need to sort this. It's like, do we go to Marseille and have the doctors there have a look at him, see if they can build an elixir or study him, etc. Or do we head towards this fucking island he keeps talking about in his dreams? And you kind of have those conflicts early on about what way the group needs to go, kind of what's best for Hugo, and then it obviously goes off into its own direction. But the crux of it is that Alicia wants Hugo to get better, and it's like they go on this journey, hopefully, to find a way to do that.
So when's it actually set, and where's it set?
I had the dates up many moons ago, but it's
exact dates are required.
It's old France. That's all I can tell you at this stage until Google decides to, give me the actual dates of itself. But I think it's like 16th or 15th century.
Okay, so we're talking. I mean, when you said old France, I was thinking 20s. I was thinking. So yeah, we're talking like. For some reason, my brain went to medieval. That's not medieval. I mean,
well, I don't know, mate. It's on the state of the character.
Tudors, Tudor age,
14th century France. There you go.
Oh, it is medieval. That's not medieval, but I don't know. Is it?
They're living.
Oh, forget it. I don't bloody know.
It ain't like 2022. I'll tell you that much.
All right, okay. So he's ill.
Yeah, yeah, well.
Before we got any NHS and all that sort
Oh
of
yeah,
stuff.
none of that going on. It's all religious people that seem to be controlling the
Right,
hell,
okay.
which is a problem in itself. Because if they go a bit crazy down the old god line, then you think, well, what are they really up to in those rooms? It's not to be trusted. But yeah, he's afflicted with this illness,
right.
and there's a seemingly a plague of rats that are following him and infesting areas of the country where people are getting bitten, and it's causing exodus of humans. They're dying out. It's causing mass deaths. So
It's almost like the Black Plague.
Essentially,
sort of
yeah. The bubonic plague, or whatever you want to dress it up as. It may even be referred to as that in the game. But that's occurring as well, which is making these rats a problem to be getting rid of when you need to get from A to B. And then there's guards there in your way, and you're like, oh, now how do we get there?
So the purpose of the game is to save Hugo, and then you've got to deal with these rats in between.
Yeah. So in order to get there, you have to go through rats and guards and other nefarious people that are looking to, for whatever reason, just kill you on sight. Various reasons for that, but generally there ain't a lot of nice people you bump into in certain zones. They ain't going to let you off.
So we're in. Right, so I got the premise of the game. So it's a journey. So you're going on this journey with Hugo, and you've got to navigate some stuff as you go.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So, what do you think this game does well through your 19 hours of gameplay? What are your favourite highlights of the game?
Well, I think the fact that it has these nests of rats lurking in some of the levels is just, from a technical perspective and just a theme perspective, quite unique. Like they quoted that they can have 300,000 rats at once, and they're like,
good grief!
You'll just see them; they'll just be like waves of them on the floor, like moving around. You can hear them all going, and there's like set pieces sometimes when they come steaming out on a chase, and it's literally like tidal waves of rats. It's really impressive to see. So that is retained from the original, that kind of unique premise and setup and interaction with the rats. And the game itself is stunning. You know, the environments, the landscapes, the vistas, the actual kind of physical world they've built is really beautiful. They've done a really, really good job on that front. I didn't get it all right because the lip syncing is just bad. There's no other word to describe it. And the facial animations non-existent for the most part. Right. So you've kind of got this narrative and these characters that really do deserve a bit better upon close inspection, like during the poignant moments. And it's just a bit out of sync. It's just one of those distracting things that when you've got some really strong character moments, it kind of loses a little bit, given some of the standards that have been set previously by other games. And it's kind of lacking also a little bit of cinematic, I'd say consistent, high quality cinematic direction. You know, even when there are the high notes that are happening, they certainly do exist, but there are times when like big moments to do with characters, like poignant emotional moments, play out, and you're just left with the standard camera behind the character, and like someone's just like breaking down in front of you. Like this should be like directed, zoomed in cuts. Like it should all be cinematically, and it's just sometimes it's not. So you can tell they've made concessions at some point to not kind of go down that route, and it's just one of those things where you can tell that. And I know we talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of team size, but it feels like they're punching above their weight almost in the looks department, because there are other areas where they clearly need a bit more work on. But narratively, it's strong. It is very strong. It's not top drawer, but mostly solid. Has some questionable character moments and motivations, but generally is pretty strong throughout. And kind of starts in an acceptable manner. Like I think it starts and you're like, okay, I get what's going on here. Sags a little bit in the middle, but then fulfills its potential in the last sort of third or so. And in terms of the gameplay, I guess for the good side of things, the stealth is pretty solid for the most part. You know, you have tools to distract or to wipe out enemies. Stealth is definitely the most efficient and safest way, because direct combat, you know, it's difficult when it all kicks off because it gets a little bit clunky at that stage. But I like the fact that in the stealth moments, if you stick to that, you'll often have a companion in tow and they'll have some sort of ability to help you out. So like one of them can spark torches to distract guards, and another one can set fire to grass, so you can sort of direct them to do things to distract a guard, then you can sneak by. So you have a handful of those companions throughout, and they all have different kind of skills that you can lean on. You don't get to choose the companion, it's just the story will
gives
say,
it to you.
You know, you split up from so-and-so, so now you're with, I don't know, Lucas or whoever it might be. And that's fun to mess around with. But yeah, I think it's strongest in its the narrative side of things, presented probably not in the most perfect way, but certainly when you first switch this on and just look at it, the vistas are just like incredible. You think, good lord. But it does have those clunky sides, particularly when things get a bit hairy. You're left scrambling around and fighting, and usually it's too stiff for me to feel like I can dynamically get away. It's not very kinetic. It's all like you've got a slingshot basically, and you're like, that's fucking slow to wind up. And then by the time you've got there, they fucking bossed you one in the nose, and you can be down. So it really is keep out of sight. I also really like, actually, it's a small point, but there's like skills that you can unlock throughout the game, and rather than you just getting experience and having to invest points, the skills will unlock depending on how you've played the game. So if you're really aggressive and take people out, you'll get new skills that will help with that play style. If you're stealthy, avoid conflict, you'll get skills and the kind of experience that builds up on its own to do with that play style. And if you're anything like me, I was kind of mixing and matching depending on it. I kind of had unlocked a few skills in each of the 3 disciplines that are offered. So I like that that's part of the game as well, because I'm sick of having to look at a menu and go, oh, what should I put my point in next? It does have that, because you can upgrade your gear. So you can find parts, upgrade gear and whatnot. But as the player, you can earn new abilities like crouching, and when you crouch move, you can move quieter and quicker after a certain time if you've kind of fulfilled the requirements for that. And it doesn't tell you exactly how to do it. It just has like the descriptions, like aggressive or I think prudence, one of them, and whatnot. And you kind of look and think, right, there's a stealth option, there's the aggressive one, there's an opportunistic one. Is that for distractions? I don't know. But it was quite fun just seeing those bars go up depending on how I'd played and unlocking new bits and pieces.
Yeah, I quite like that. Sometimes it really aggravates me when I have to go, how do I want to play this game? Well, I don't know yet, because I don't know what's coming up or what I might need. No. So I like the way that it just goes, whatever you use gets leveled up or improved. That's quite a cool little function.
Yeah.
So moving on to some of the more negative aspects of the game, I know we've sort of given a bit of pretty balanced view of some of the positives and negatives there, but the real drawbacks, if any, of this game, what was noteworthy in your gameplay?
I'd say just in general, it's a bit scruffy. Just it has that scruffiness about it that you don't Well, you do see it. You absolutely do see it. There's maybe a lack of polish there. I mean, it didn't run that well on the PC. Like I had the frame rate limit on for about a third of the game, like on and off probably throughout. I didn't have it on or off all the time, and it was always over 60 FPS, but it would go from like 100 FPS down to 60, and it just felt a bit stuttery sometimes. It wasn't consistent, and it's difficult to say, well, that's the game or is it the PC? This is why the PC gaming is a little bit of a banana skin. Because I'm like, did I have it set up wrong? Did I have it optimized wrong? You just don't know. Was I fucking playing another game in the background that I hadn't switched off? Who really knows? All I can say is that with that 3080 and that Ryzen 7 5800, it still wasn't the optimal experience in terms of consistency. However, the alternative would have been to put it onto the Series X and probably play it in the 30 FPS mode, or there is a 40 FPS mode if you've got a 120 hertz display that can handle it. And to be honest, I think the PC was the better option at that point. It's particularly the fact that I could play on the DualSense as well, which was helpful. So there's just the general lack of polish. Like, there's a strange bit where there was a gate that I had to get through. There's a doorway behind it, and I had to raise the gate. I didn't really know. So I got to the area, and it was like, oh, the gate's locked, it's down. I was like, oh, fucking hell. As I walked away, the prompt come up. I hit triangle, and they clipped through the gate and opened the door. I was like, how's that got through, QA? I've skipped a bit. I've skipped having to go all the way over there to the right-hand side to unlock the gate, which probably caused noise and other interest. I just got through a bit, and I was like, All right. There's just some weird things that happening now and again, but generally, there's not a lot to really crap on it about. It's more expansive than the original in terms of the play areas it puts you in, like the arenas that they put you in. So there's more options. There's one exit usually, but you can go around, you can go directly through, you can go sort of zigzagging depending on, if you want to avoid the rats. They're scared of fire and light, so they won't get you if you've got a fire or light set up. So you might be able to go from torch to torch, or you might say, "Oh, there's a guard in the way. There's rats around him. He's got a fire torch. I'll extinguish his torch, and the rats will eat him." You can do things like that, which is really really fun. And because you've got a bigger play area, it feels like a bit of an upgrade from that sense. But generally, nothing majorly wrong. One of the Ronnie things that annoyed me is that it lacked what I would say is a good walking pace. Like, you tilt the analog stick a little bit and she walked a bit slow. I was like, I just need a bit more speedy, because if I tilted it anymore, she started jogging. So if I'm walking around a town, I don't want to be jogging around. Who jogs around a market? No one. Yeah. And it was just a bit too slow. So that was, it's a complete... Most people are like, what are you talking about now?
No, sometimes it annoys me, right? The thing that annoys me is the way that they usually combat that is by you end up walking in slow motion instead. Yeah. Rather than walking just a bit slower, it just slows the animation down. There just
wasn't an optimal speed that felt quick enough that I was making progress at a speed I was happy, but then wouldn't just break into a jog. But there we go. It is has its issues. It definitely shows its teeth in some areas in terms of its ugly teeth. But generally enjoyed it, to be honest. 19 hours, an extension on time of the original as well. So everything's kind of gone forwards and up, and it's tied together with a nice narrative that isn't the greatest thing, but is certainly solid and has its moments for sure.
Cool. So we'll move along then and go towards the ending of this review.
Yeah.
And that, as we know, culminates in pulling up outside the Dimp Digital's now world famous, even though we're a grassroots endeavour, but world famous gaming gallery. And I usually look towards you in the car and I'll wave the keys and wait to see whether I get the go ahead to go in or not. Yeah. So
you've got the nod.
Do we do that for this one? I've got the nod. There we go. So let's go into your exhibition.
Yeah.
I believe we call them exhibitions these days. I lose track.
Could be a showcase. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be a showcase coming soon. But where do we put this one? Is it the famous dumping ground that we know and love? Well, or does it go higher? Or does it go lower?
Look, it's in that area where it's good. It's good with some great, but some not so good. It's not consistently great, so gold's out of the question. It's really between bronze and silver.
Yeah.
And considering the last one didn't even get in the fucking rankings...
It might well have done.
It might well have done. You may well be right there.
I think on today's grading criteria, that gets a bronze.
I don't know if it's even that. I just think my head's changed. It doesn't really care about things like that anymore.
That's what I'm saying. On the grading criteria, and by the criteria, I mean our own criteria, I suspect that you would now put the original as a bronze.
Yeah, probably.
So with that in sight, is this one a significant enough upgrade to get into silver, or is it an upgrade but not quite that sort of 8 out of 10 level?
It feels like The Last of Us Light. I don't mean that as a criticism. It actually feels like the original more, because it does have that sort of clunkiness to it a little bit. And there's even bits, Logan, where one of the things people take the piss out of The Last of Us for is that there's loads of scenes where you pick up like boxes and move them into place and climb up and get up and over a bit. They'd have carts in this dozens of times. You get a cart and win. I was like, oh my god, this is like The Last of Us. It's like a horror-based kind of stealth game. Has elements of action. You've got a companion with you all the time. Like a youngster usually. It's really
reskinned The Last of Us.
Reskinned it in many ways, but it doesn't quite hit the high notes consistently of The Last of Us in that sense. But I think even if I was going to ignore my perhaps my mistake with Innocence, I think it stands and gives itself a nice silver on its own anyway, because it's a nice expansive experience. Like 19 hours is good. maybe outstayed its welcome a tiny bit, but I think you're getting a good trade off with that. And like I said, it's in that genre that I enjoy. Doesn't disgrace itself. Has some frustrating moments for sure, but I think all in all, when you balance the books, it's a nice silver there. And I'll just sort of cap off my thoughts by saying something really controversial. Team Asobo, who developed this, they do Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. They're kind of being groomed to be purchased by Phil and Co. But with Activision going on, they're not allowed to really be snapping up small things. So I imagine in the next 18 months, they will go into the Microsoft Studios pot, which is fine. Could do with a bit more money, absolutely. But these type of games, Sony and PlayStation have just been smashing. Like, there's something to do with their production, their support system around those games. Like, this type of game would thrive in that environment. I'm not saying Xbox can't do it. I'm just saying the trends that we've seen in the last 5 years or so, Sony can do it. You've got the evidence.
So this,
there.
The argument could be then that this would have been like a 9 out of 10 sort of game rather than an
It's
8.
got right.
With
That's
that
the thing.
polish.
It has the potential to be further up for sure. I guess the ceiling is a bit higher for it. It just needs those extra elements.
Interesting.
And I hope that they do get purchased by one or the other, and there's some money pumped into it. And I really, if it does go to Xbox, I hope they can pull it out the bag and show they can do this as well. But even things like Horizon Forbidden West, which is a follow-up to Horizon Zero Dawn. First one, really static faces, like lip sync a bit of. Forbidden West, the facial animations, the lip syncing is fucking incredible, and that's, again, under the Sony umbrella. This would really benefit from that cinematic kind of polish and support and production that the Sony games seem to have. The argument could be made that that's the developers doing it, but I do think there's a trend in that the publishing arm of Sony, the support they send out to kind of review the games whilst they're in development, to guide them, help with that as well, and they can share technology and tips with the other teams as well. But
probably also share, like, some of this might be outsourced and they get some people in to do certain elements and help out. And it might just be something like, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? That someone might know someone, or they've got a link to a company or whatever, and goes, oh no, get so-and-so in to do that. Yeah. It's just interesting how having something like that behind them might take it, as you say, from something that needs more polish to just getting those extra elements that tip it upwards. But no, it's good. Interesting. Well, it's really positive then. Yeah. I mean, it's very rarely, to be fair, do we get through these reviews these days without some glaring
disaster.
Well, I wouldn't say disaster, but some sort of glaring negative. And really, the only negative on this is more polish. Yeah. Which you could argue, well, that's across a lot of the game, but polish is just those sort of finishing touches, right? They're not polish, fundamental.
I think there is some. They need to be operating at a bit of a higher level of production as well. But for everything else, it does a pretty good job of attaining its goals, I guess. So, looking forward to see what Asobo do next. If it's not Flight Simulator, no disrespect to Flight Simulator, but I'd rather have another game like this from them than another expansion to Flight Sim. Which is an impressive technical feat in itself, to be quite honest.
True.
But there we go. That's it.
In the books.
Idle Game Chat closes down for another week. Thanks for joining us on this particular episode. We'll be back in your feeds as and when we're ready, probably in a week's time, but nothing more for us to say here other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.